Sports have always been an integral part of my life. As a kid, I played a little bit of tennis, failed. I tried out some swimming, I failed that too. And I did about one class of MMA. I don't really want to talk about that. Just for future reference, in case you ever go to one of those classes with your kids, there's no such thing as a special submission closet where you get one-on-one lessons. Oh, and I did a stint of rugby, where on my first and last game ever, I got completely destroyed by, I'm not even joking, a 5'3" little ginger Afrikaans boy. That guy f***ed me up. And then I proceeded to dislocate my arm socket that same game. But in spite of all of my experimentation, the one true sport I've always been passionate about and have always loved is real football. I'm not even joking when I say some of my best memories as an adult now was when I was playing sweeper left back straight up. And part of me still regrets to this day at the age of 15 giving up the sport entirely so I could go hang out with other teens and go to parties and pretend that I like art and movies to impress the Septim Pierce girl with hairy armpits. I'm a jock, baby. An alpha male. And I should have lived that true. My memories from my youth should be filled with a hard 90 minutes and then looking at boy butt after the game, as opposed to ladies' butts after a hard 20 seconds. But regardless, these are the choices we make. And today we're going to be talking about someone who made their own set of choices. And he made it very big with them. I'd like you to meet Michael O'Hare. Hell, you might already be familiar with him, if you ever watched Disney in 2009, where he featured in a little-known movie called The Song of the South. Yeah, Michael was that actor who portrayed a magical slave who had cartoon characters hang out with him on his, let me emphasize this word, slave plantation. That's a joke, he was never in that, but that is a real movie that came out in 1946. And dude, let me tell you, I think about it a lot. Not only because I can't get the Blu-ray edition of it anyway, as much as I try, but I also think about that main actor. Could you imagine going to that family dinner for a second? It would have been so awkward. His entire family would have hated him. The real movie that Michael O'Hare was a part of and based off was the smash hit, and I'm pretty sure it got nominated for a few awards, The Blind Side, a movie describing Michael's early life struggles as well as his later flourishing football career. If you've never seen the film, I'll give you a quick little rundown. The gist of it is, Michael had a really rough upbringing, with 12 siblings and 2 neglectful parents. His mother was a severe addict, and his father was a career criminal who was very ass at it because he kept getting arrested. I think he died, but I'm not sure. Of course, this not being the ideal situation for a young man to grow up in between little patches of being homeless, Michael found himself bouncing between foster care homes and barely being able to see his biological parents. If you're confused by this, let me explain. As someone who's very familiar with child abduction and the inner workings of it, if you are a neglectful parent, you are given chances. So right, bam, strike one is we steal Jessica. Maybe we give you 2 months to sober up and get your life together, with a little bit of supervised visitation to make sure everything's on the up and up. After a certain amount of attempts, the child will eventually be put up for adoption. The idea behind this, although sounding incredibly cruel, is just to give a child a stable upbringing. And in some cases, as opposed to being adopted, you can also just age out of the system, where you're thrown into the world as a grown adult with no family, no educational prospects, and no idea what to do with yourself. Regardless, Michael's case is different. While he was in foster care and attending high school, he met the Toohey family. Now, long story short, the Tooheys took a very big shining to Michael and eventually allowed him to move into their home with them, and eventually ended up adopting him, or so he thinks. We will come back to that later. Fairy tale ending stuff. He gets the family, he wins the big game, and he gets a really nice career. Also, Michael fought. The cracks, according to Michael, in this absolutely beautiful, picturesque ending, started to form all the way back when the film The Blind Side was released. And Michael grew very disillusioned and frustrated with the Toohey family, as well as the production team behind The Blind Side, with the many inaccuracies that they portrayed of him. Not to mention, as someone who vaguely remembers the movie because it's been many years and watched a couple clips on YouTube, they portray Michael as either incredibly shy, if you're feeling charitable, and or, more likely, a big dumb idiot. Another peeve that he had was it's claimed in the film that the Tooheys were the ones that helped him with his American football career, when in actuality, Michael was a naturally gifted athlete from the time he was born pretty much. Slam dunking hoops as a baby, no older than 2. That's an exaggeration, but he was quite gifted at basketball and track and field. Point being, the movie and the Tooheys in a sense, because they signed off on it, because remember at the time, Michael's still a minor when he gives the consent for the movie to be made, basically portray themselves in the film as the people who kind of got him where he is today, when in reality, it was always on the cards for Michael to make it big in some sort of professional sport, and the Tooheys, if anything, only provided him with a stable place to live as well as food and clothes. Essential stuff. The fact that Michael doesn't discredit or dismiss in any shape or form, saying in his autobiography, in fact, that because of the Tooheys' influence and help in his own life, the stabilization allowed his grades to improve and gave him more time to focus on his actual hobbies. One of those hobbies include American football. As I've said, the cracks started started to form when that film was released. And as the years go by and you mature as an adult and deal with some of your legitimate trauma that Michael has as a result of being homeless and raised by a crack addict — I don't know if she was a crack addict, I'll correct myself in the background if I'm wrong — you start to heal some of those pieces that sounded normal at the time but were in fact a bit as after all, he was pretty much known for his entire career, aside from being a gifted athlete, as the Blindside Kid, the Disney princess story guy. Where it really all came to head was when Michael discovered some of the paperwork in his own little file. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, Michael was having a meeting with his accountant early of 2023. And while taking stocks and bonds of his various assets, as of course Michael is incredibly well off, having 8 successful careers in the NFL, and I believe he won the Super Bowl one time, which to Europeans who don't care about it, the Super Bowl is pretty much the Nations League. It's there, but everyone just wants to suck the dick of the Euros, let's be honest. Anyway, he discovered that he was not in fact adopted, as he was led to believe by the Tuohys, but was in fact in a conservatorship. God, I hope I said that right. Conservatorship, which you may be familiar with from the whole Britney Spears fiasco. You see, to Michael, he believed he was the legal son of the Tuohys, and as such, when he signed that deal for The Blind Side, that would come along with all the protections of a child/parent relationship. But the tricky thing about the contract that Michael got locked into, it's not the same at all. The idea behind a conservatorship, I can't pronounce that word, is that the person who is the conservee is not mentally capable of taking charge of their own life as well as their own financial decisions. Basically meaning the Tuohys had full control over Michael's finances and or business relations. Granted, you could be biting your tongue behind the screen trying not to spit that venom out of your throat and say, but they never took advantage of him, otherwise he would have known. Like you said, he was in the NFL for 8 seasons. Well, that's not the point here, guys. The point is, Michael, this young fella, was under the impression that he was a part of the family legally, but he wasn't at all, and signed himself into what could only be described as servitude, even though he's more than mentally capable of taking care of himself, even back then, mind you. Michael, of course, hurt by this discovery, has now taken his adoptive parents to court, and alleges that the Tuohy have claimed ill-gotten gains through his name, i.e. they took a lot more shares than they should have of The Blind Side. The question then becomes, why now as a 35-year-old man is Michael pursuing this? Well, I can understand why he would want to end the conservatorship, seeing as by all rights, even as a 35-year-old man, the Tuohys, if they really wanted to, could take full advantage of him and claim his assets for themselves, but I can't understand why he waited so long. I've tried to wrap my head around it, and at first I thought it was financially motivated, as you normally do, but from all accounts, Michael is really well off, and from all accounts also, the Tuohys were extremely well off before they even got that film deal for The Blind Side. So I'm going to stop twisting the tip of your dicks and just tell you why, or at least allegedly, according to the Tuohys, why they put him in a conservatorship. The Tuohys were allegedly led to believe that they couldn't legally adopt Michael, and the only way that they could get him to play football and be a part of their family in the NCAA brackets was to take conservatorship over his life. The thing is, though, in Tennessee, the place that they were at, adult adoption is completely legal, so there's next to no excuse for this to take place. And as I said already, the Tuohys were well off, so there was no need for them to do this at all. But again, you feel like if you're that well off, you would want a second opinion, and or you would find out just by means of looking it up that you could in fact adopt Michael. So the only conclusion that I can be left with, as this was not financially motivated, I think, and or out of any place of hate, was racism. The scariest word in the book, but not traditional racism like your good old boys in the South. This is more liberal white racism, which is way worse in my opinion. See, what I like about genuine racists is they'll tell you they don't like you for the reasons they don't like you. A progressive racist will be racist inherently without even realizing they're being so. Follow me for a second, it sounds ridiculous, but I've known so many people with the brown smell across the top of their lip my entire life that it's not only plausible, it's common. Basically, the idea is that it's not coming out of a place of hatred, but out of a place of, what's the word? I know better than you? Like, in my view, I think the Tuohys saw Michael as this, kid who came from the streets, lower education, being black, in their own biases mentally without saying it out loud, and thought to themselves at the time of this all occurring, there's absolutely no way this dude knows what to do to look after himself, and just assumed it would be alright to take control of his life. And then, instead of facing the music years later or months later after they realized, well, actually, Michael's not a big dum-dum, he's quite an intelligent young man, they were just too afraid to own up to their mistakes, and just kinda lived with the lie. Seriously, that's what I think actually happened, because unless they really hate Michael for whatever reason, there is no other way this makes sense. So yes, to me, it genuinely, even though it's lighthearted, does feel kind of racist. You, of course, are entitled to your own opinions, but I'm gonna stick my fingers in my ears and go, nanny, nanny, boo, boo. Now that that's been covered, let's redirect my dagger directly at the lawsuit. So Michael's part in all of this, aside from being the conservee, is the person who brought the lawsuit to head. 1, to end his conservatorship, and 2, to allegedly claim back all of the funds that he lost as a young man, because according to him, he saw none, if any, of the Blind Side's profits. And if you had to ask me what I think Michael's being a dick. I could completely understand why you would be absolutely heartbroken over this fact when you grew so attached to this family for so many years, but this is Kaku talk in private, and is completely unnecessary and, to be honest, very vindictive to bring it out into the public space for everybody to know about. For example, I remember many years ago I had a problem with my father, as he was sleeping with my girlfriend, but in a private setting we discussed what we were going to do about it, and we shook hands and agreed that I would sleep with his wife. That's how I ended up with my half-brother. Point being that there's always a way that you can talk to one another and resolve these issues in private. I think it's really, really wrong of him to go at his not adoptive parents' throats like this and drag their name through the mud, even though they're racists. And I also think this is just a messy situation that's boiled over way out of hand. Personally, the only outcome I want from all of this is for Michael and his parents to reconcile, and for his parents to admit what they did was completely out of line and they're racist. And I would like Michael to drop the lawsuit because you don't need the money. This is just called being a dick now. The real victim in this story is me, because out of everybody, I need the money the most. Hence why you have to legally subscribe since you made it this far. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see where this story goes. Bye bye.